to your mind, lost in.
But I do feel that like just doing a music show has just kind of inspired me to create my own music. I just started learning guitar back in May of 2023. I didn't think I'd be composing my own music, but I guess, inspiration yields inspiration. So just going with the flow.
It does, and it's definitely a learning curve. I can say that as an artist, I have gone through, I like to call it chapters of a book. Just like you pick up Pet Sematary, one of my favorite books. You go through all the different chapters and you start learning about the family and their pets and the experiences they're going through. You start to develop more of an understanding. So as an artist and as a creator, when you do podcasting and drawing or making something or learn guitar or whatever type of instrument, it's just adding to that, and it's incredible. It's an amazing thing that artists are able to do. It's just add to the package.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So are my levels okay for you? Is it picking up okay on your end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we sound professional. I hope so, I mean, this podcast is not very professional by any means.
I've listened to a few. It sounds pretty professional.
Oh, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, because the audio, the production quality, because there are some, I've listened to some podcasts, right? It's obvious they're recording from phones and instead of broadcast quality. And I figure, okay, maybe the content might be ear catching, but it helps, I think, to have, decent equipment,
The thing about it is people get very sidetracked on the fact that, you look at a lot of these big podcasters and they have EDI, MDFI modifiers, auto tuners, scanners, equalizers, synchronizers. I mean, we're talking about equipment that can run upwards of $5,000 to $10,000, even $20,000. But you don't have to necessarily have that. It's great to have that equipment. Don't get me wrong. But you can do a lot of the things today with using artificial intelligence, audio programming. This is the reason I have a Blue microphone. Yeti is owned by Logitech, so this is all computerized. And I can adjust it to my own specifications. These are things that podcasters should look out for. It's like, don't focus too much on your equipment. Focus on, the quality and like the type of podcasting you want to give out.
Exactly. Yeah. But there are some that they don't even have a condenser mic. I don't even know if some of them own a computer, and you can hear it when you listen to it. If you've listened to other shows but these people will have millions of followers all because the content could be something that's trending and that's, people like. So they maybe the listeners just don't care, But for me, it's just like it's not distracting. Like, it's like yours. It's like it sounds like you guys are in the same room because this program, it seems like it offers that broadcast quality.
Well, yeah, it does. It records our files separately, and to touch on your point, when the same way when you walk into a store, would you feel comfortable you walk into a store and it's like shitty lighting and like half the ceiling's coming off?
No.
And like it's dirty and it's like, but we have great deals. We're great. You can walk out and you're like, ugh, I don't want to buy from here.
Yeah, even if the overhead music is coming across crackly, that turns me off as a customer. Even though it might not be a music store, it might be a fast food place, but that to me shows they're not taking care of their store.
Obviously.
Like yeah.
And people can argue, well, they probably don't have the money or it's difficult. Can I tell you something? It costs $20 a month to run Zencastr. It costs $7 a month to have Podmatch. It costs maybe another $20 to have your own host. If you don't want to use like Spotify or one of those other programs. And that's like what? Like $60, $80? Okay, that's a lot of money, but that's not like, it's not like $300-$400. It's something that's at least somewhat reasonable.
Yes. Absolutely.
So there is possibility. There is possibility for more and more people to do podcasting, and and
Yeah.
why do you think so many podcasts fail? It's not necessarily because they just give up. It's just like, I don't have the right equipment. That I need this. I need. It's like, dude. I mean, how has it been for yourself though, like pertaining to your podcast? Like how have you been able to like implement different things and being
Mm.
able to get that better quality that you've been looking for?
That's a great question because this is actually the second podcast I've hosted. Honestly, well, the thing is, since I'm using Anchor, it's 100% free. So the only overhead is the website, and the website's just really not a lot. So this, yeah, I'm not having to invest in as much as the other one that I hosted. I was doing a video podcast before, and it was different content. So honestly, it's not like I have a lot of subscribers, a lot of downloads, but honestly, it's just I feel that I'm just focusing on enjoying it, and I'm hoping that eventually more people catch on because of the type of podcast it is, because it's focused on classic rock and it's focused on people who've been making music for a while, and the fact that the only way people can hear the entire songs is if they have a Spotify premium account. So I realize it's a little bit more of a challenge to real people because they might not have Spotify, they might have Deezer, they might have Amazon Music. So, but in time, honestly, I'm just enjoying it. Really, I'm not so. I feel that if that was my motivation, then I would stop doing it. Because that's what happened with the last one. I was investing a lot in my last show, and I was spending too much money. So that's why that project failed. But with this one, it's like I'm not investing as much, so there's not the pressure there that I have to monetize. It's not like
Right.
monetize or die, if that makes any sense.
Well, again, sorry to just keep tying back to this. This is I had Alex on my podcast, and the thing about Podmatch, which is how we interact and be able to connect with this, I don't think there's ever been a platform like Podmatch for podcasters. I mean, maybe Matchmaker FM, but it sucks. I've tried
It
using it.
does.
It sucks.
I get ghosted more times on there. Podmatch people get back to me, nine, but I think maybe only 2 people might have never responded, or they deleted their account maybe and never saw my message. So fair game. I definitely agree with you, and I feel it's easier to find like-minded guests that you can cross promote with on Podmatch versus Matchmaker.fm. The searching is a lot more user friendly, podcaster friendly.
Well, the interesting thing, like besides the whole fact, is that there's more opportunity now, especially like if you're talking about, for example, rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
When we go back to, let's just say 1979, okay?
Yeah.
You go back to 1979, and if you were a Led Zeppelin fan,
Yes.
you could not be a Rolling Stones fan. Vice versa, if you're a Pink Floyd fan, you couldn't be a Led Zeppelin. The reason is because like everybody was like in their like group, and they had like their niche, and like a lot of people would go to like a lot of the bands, they go to like all the Led Zeppelin concerts throughout the country, like they're Led Zeppelin fans. Today, people have more access to music. I have listened to songs by Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd that we probably never haven't heard, like unreleased pieces or different things you could find online that the bands have put out, which is amazing. Same thing with the Beatles. Paul McCartney has been absolutely fantastic about this.
Yeah.
And it's not just about history. It's like a great way to see into an artist's mind that you already love. You already appreciate their music, and you want to hear like, oh, I didn't know that they did that session, back in 73. Let me check that out. You
Mm-hmm.
have that access now. You didn't have that available to you 30 to 40 years ago, which is
It's
one of the
true.
biggest advantages.
That is one of the biggest advantages. And honestly, I feel that, staying on that same point, I feel that I thought downloads in the beginning were like a silent killer for being a music connoisseur. I feel streaming in a way is kind of reviving the old school in a way, even though it's still, you don't have the physical music. I feel that I've noticed that younger people are now buying vinyls again, and I feel that what they're doing is they're hearing something they like on Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, and they're going out and buying the vinyls because they're like, this is really cool. I want to own this music, but they want to own it in its best quality. So I feel like streaming is, you know, it's still a little bit like fast food, but not as much as downloads, because downloads it's just like you're just taking a piece of the pie. But streaming, you're getting the whole library at least.
Yeah,
You
and
might
the thing, by the way, to mention about when you're dealing with vinyl records, you're listening to a whole album.
you're listening to a whole album. Yes. And you're also hitting every frequency when you're listening to it. Whereas a compact disc, CD, it's compressed audio. Streaming, compressed audio. But it's uncompressed. You're hearing it in its full glory, as long as there's no scratches or nicks on it when you listen to the vinyl.
I hate to say this. I have a Patsy Cline. It came out in 1955. It's one of the oldest vinyl records I have in my collection.
Mm-hmm.
It has 4 scratches. And one of them is on the song with 3 cigarettes. And it
Wow.
almost gives her a wisp. So it's like a tss. So like in the song, like a tss. And I'm one of those people, when I hear like the cracks and the crackles and like the hisses, it kind of adds more to the experience, because
I agree.
You can hear like the needle going through
Yeah.
like the different grooves.
Mm-hmm. I especially like that when you start to listen to vinyls from the 80s.
Oh, they're
At first
shit.
you're hearing the hiss, but then all of a sudden you're hearing
Dude, they're like a freaking like slice of salami. They just go blah 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 blah, blah. Like there's no
right.
they're like so thin.
Yes. I'm disappointed
in-
because my Beverly Hills Cop, I can't hear the neutron dance in its full glory. I mean, I bought a used copy, but still, it's just like, oh man, I see what you mean.
You sometimes have to go heavier.
Yes.
Because I have an adjustable knob. The problem is when you go heavier with the needle on those older vinyls, they warp them. You know, and it's kind of like a big problem with like 80 vinyls where you want to play them.
Yeah.
But you don't want to damage them, and they're very easy to damage. Like if I had like a vinyl from like the 70s, that shit lasts forever. You can play it and play it and play it and play it, and you're good.
Yeah, so you think maybe in the 80s, maybe since that was the last heyday of vinyls, they started to not put it, because they were focusing on other types of production during that time, tapes. Do you think that's why the quality wasn't as good, maybe?
I actually think the 90s was even worse. I have a record I can show you. But yeah, it probably is. You know, kind of towards that point, you know, they were trying to sell out compact discs.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I grew up with CDs, tapes, tape players. We used tapes more than CDs as a kid. My mom hated CDs. She's like, she would always complain like, oh my God, who scratched this again? And it was irritating. You know, you're like,
yeah.
You have to take it out and you have to clean it. And then it still was like, you know, they weren't, honestly, like CDs were not really great. Like I grew up with it. It really wasn't that great.
No, it was hyped, I think, because it was the fact that, oh my God, this laser's making this thing move quick, and it looks like a record. People
forgot about the Laserdisc. Why it only lasted for a few years.
Right. Well, the Laserdisc did not last long. No. Good point.
They weren't good. You know, it's like people are like, I'm going to take this black little box and shove it in my, and listen to VHS. You know, that's a lot easier.
Exactly. Exactly. But, tapes are even making comebacks. So, yeah, that was one of the inspirations for veteran rockers, is that I feel like there are a lot of these, old geezers out there that are still rocking and still, they still, especially the guitarists, they know their way around the fretboard still. They can still pluck the fingers, and they can still come up with stuff that's new and interesting.
You mean like Sting or Mick Jagger?
Yes, those guys. So I feel
love
okay.
Sting.
Yes, I do. I even like his newer stuff. So I was like, let me just make a show that I could shine a light on that. These guys have made great music over the years, but there's things that we might have missed along the way. So that's why I throw in B-sides and then throw in something new. But then I'll do these special episodes were all focused on time periods of artists' careers that kind of got overlooked in the shuffle. For instance, Paul McCartney in the 1980s, I did a 2-part series about his career from the time he released McCartney 2 up until he collaborated with Elvis Costello at the end of the decade on Flowers in the Dirt. So many things happened in between. It started off strong, and then he followed up with Tug of War. But then he tried to go into Hollywood, and he made a good soundtrack, but the movie flopped. And then he tried to be current in the mid 80s, worked with Hugh Padgham, who's worked with the Police, XTC, Peter Gabriel. That didn't work. People thought Paul was trying too hard to be current. But as I was listening to that album he did with Hugh called Press to Play, there was some interesting stuff there that was, I'd consider it more art pop as opposed to high 80s, which is like really shitty. Oh God, why was this ever made? But it's popular 80s. So I feel that maybe because the producer gave it bad press, that might be why that album didn't do very well compared to his other albums.
I can't speak for Paul, but I can tell you as somebody that has experienced loss in my life. For example, like a loved one. I could I'll tell you what. Check if you go on YouTube, check the very first interview with Paul McCartney right after John Lennon's assassination.
Yes. Oh my gosh, the look of shock. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said that that him and John were actually thinking of starting to work together, and he had plans of starting to develop new ways of making his music throughout the new decade.
Yeah.
And his best friend was just assassinated by a fucking schmuck.
Yeah.
And now his life is like, and you could, like you were saying, you can see throughout the 80s, he was really trying to figure out on how to survive without John.
He was lost. And there's a song off of Tug of War. He started recording Tug of War, I think, right before John passed, and then continued it months later. And a song ended up on there called Here Again. And it was about his best friend, and it was very Beatles-esque when you listen to it. And you could see as he was writing it, it's that the grieving was very fresh, So you could see where he was at that point, but that's, I think, like you said, why he was lost for a good part of that decade. And it wasn't until he collaborated with Elvis Costello that he got his muse back, because he told him to pick up that Hofner violin bass that he hadn't picked up with since his time with the Beatles. And during that time in the late 80s, a lot of, veteran rockers, as I call them, were starting to go back to their roots a little bit and make more guitar-driven rock.
Mick Jagger. It's funny, though, because Mick Jagger didn't start, coming out with more new content until, the mid-90s. I think it wasn't until after Kurt Cobain committed suicide. I think, was it 94 or 95?
94, Cobain killed himself. 90, but a year before.
I think it was 95.
Really?
I think it was 95 when Mick Jagger had that concert.
The concert.
There was a concert he did in the 90s with the Rolling Stone. It was one of the big. Oh shit! I'm gonna get my fucking phone. Hold on.
I do remember an album that came out after Voodoo Lounge that was like a it was songs they recorded on the road, and they did a
yes. Okay. I'm sorry, and you were my apology. I cut you off while you were talking about Paul McCartney and his collaboration with Elvis Costello.
Yeah. So this collaboration was very, very interesting and very rewarding, and it was a commercially successful album. And I just discovered that album this past year, and I was just so amazed at the content that came off of that record. It was very current for the times, but also it had a timeless quality. And I think to myself, why are these songs not being played on the radio? They were being played a lot back then, but the collaboration between Costello and Paul really worked very well, because Elvis kind of challenged Paul a little bit. Because some people say that it wasn't until he worked with the Radiohead producer, what's his name? Nigel, help me out. for
Hold on. This is why we have Google.
yes,
This-
Chaos and Creation in the Backyard is
You said
2000
it's what was it? What was the producer of? I'm sorry.
Radiohead,
Yeah, producer.
Nigel.
Let's see, Radiohead producer, Godrich,
Okay.
or Goodrich. Is it
Yes.
Godrich or Goodrich?
I'm not
I
sure.
think it's Godrich. I think it's Godrich. Okay.
Well, anyway, Nigel Godrich, we'll go with that, had told Paul when he showed him his demos, he's like, this is crap. And Paul said he hadn't heard someone use those words.
What are the letters of the alphabet?
Letters of the alphabet. He had
Where's A, B, C?
Hold on.
Where's
Nigel Godrich, right? Is that
Yes.
where we were? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, so
before the ABCs.
Before the so he was telling Paul when Paul was showing him these demos, this is crap. And so Paul said, wow, I haven't heard that since John Lennon. I was working with him. So it challenged Paul to really make a very good album because it seemed like, but after Flowers in the Dirt in 1989, all the way to 2005, the only thing that Paul had put out between that time period, besides reworking with the Beatles again briefly, was maybe Flaming Pie. But even then, I feel that it's good for these artists to every now and then get challenged, because when you're not working in a band anymore, especially when you're not working with people with strong opinions, you don't get that same. It's like adrenaline in a way. It's like I think that's
Yeah.
what made the Beatles so fantastic, because their best work came out towards the end when they were having issues. Same with Guns N' Roses, the Use Your Illusion albums. That was their most difficult,
Well, okay,
tumultuous time together. And those are their best records.
Let's be honest, and I'm on Team Sting over here. Okay. Where Team Sting says, and I'm right with him. Like, we're not pointing out any names. Somebody in Guns N' Roses kind of fucked up everything for everybody. We know
True.
who he is, and it's like, it's that one person. Just takes that one person to screw everything up for the entire band.
To sabotage it all. We're talking about the team leader, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Axl
understand.
Rose.
Chinese Democracy should have been
God.
marketed as an Axl Rose solo album or a different name, because you didn't have Slash. You didn't have Duff McKagan. You didn't have.
Guns N' Roses is nothing without those two. Like,
It isn't.
Duff McKagan and you don't have any Sting. You don't have any riff. Like Paradise City.
Yeah.
Hello. Like, that's
November
what you think
Rain.
of. November
Yeah.
Rain. Exactly. That's what you think
That's
of.
solo. Yeah.
But
The
like,
passion.
it's like, what the fuck was Axl Rose thinking, man? He's like, I am Guns N'. No, you're not. You're just Guns N' Roses because you took a shitload of cocaine and got on stage with a bunch of really fucking fantastic instrumentalists.
And I'm sorry, he's a vocalist.
He's
And
a vocalist.
There are good vocalists, but let's be fair. Would Robert Plant be able to say I'm Led Zeppelin? Would Roger Daltrey be able to say I'm The Who? No.
No.
Because Roger needs Pete, and Robert Plant needs Jimmy Page. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they haven't put out good solo work with other amazing guitarists. And
Robert Plant's solo work was really good.
It was my favorite work of his that often gets overlooked. Fate of Nations. I thought that was a very strong album, because he started to go back to his Zepp roots a bit for the first time in his career, because when he was going solo and working with the Honey Drippers, he wouldn't play any Zeppelin songs in concert for the first couple of years. But then towards the end, then towards later on in his solo career, he would collaborate with Jimmy Page again. So stuff like that, I feel it's good for bands to remember where they came from. Don't forget, Sting tried to do that, but come on. That's what started his career, was the Police.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, it's really strange because when we're looking at a lot of these musicians, we're dealing with people that were around like 60 years ago.
Yeah.
And to the one thing that I always come back to, I'm sorry, I'm jumping from band to band. An example of what a catastrophe can turn into is Queen.
Yes.
Queen went from, they were all very talented people, including Freddie Mercury. And when Freddie Mercury died, they not only turned into what Paul turned into, but eventually turned into the complete opposite, where they basically created a Freddie Mercury replacement.
Yeah.
And his name is Adam Lambert.
Yes. Another band did the same thing. I'll let you finish your thought. Yeah.
There are people that will fight with me from today until tomorrow. I'm like, listen to me. The reason why I own every single one of Queen's albums, and some of them I had to buy them in the UK, I couldn't even get them here in the States, is because of Freddie, Roger Taylor, and Brian May, and was it John Deacon? I always forget his name. He was the bass player.
Yeah.
I think it was John Deacon.
What, white hair or blonde hair?
He had an afro. He was a little quiet one, but
yeah.
It turns out that Freddie used to always bother him whenever he had problems because he didn't really talk.
Oh my goodness. That sounds like Freddie.
Yeah.
That sounds like something he would do. Yeah, there was another band that did the same thing. Big Country, Scottish group. They were kind of a one-hit wonder. You're right. They were a one-hit wonder over here, but they were huge over in Scotland and the UK. The biggest hit was in A Big Country, but they continued throughout the 90s, and sadly, Stuart Adamson, the lead singer, took his own life. And their legacy lives on. His daughter is a solo artist, Kirsten Adamson. But in 2013, they were able to reassemble, but they had a different lead singer, the lead singer of The Alarm. Mike Peters, took over. Very talented vocalist. I love The Alarm. This collaboration didn't work. You didn't have, because Adamson was also a guitar player too, and he was the lead songwriter. So that element was missing there. So when they made an album called The Journey with him at the helm, it wasn't the same. It's like going back to what you said, just trying to replace somebody, because you might be able to get similar vocals, but you don't get the same songwriting. It's not.
You know what would have been better? You know what would have been honestly better? If Roger Taylor and Brian May have done something similar to like what, Dave Grohl did, for example, like with the Foo Fighters. Because Brian May is extremely talented. So is Roger Taylor. Why do you guys have to I love them. They're fantastic musicians, but Queen is gone. We've accepted it. I think most rock and rollers have accepted that Queen is gone.
Queen is gone. Made in Heaven was, the last thing we heard was the posthumous album. Oh, yes. I love that.
Actually,
album.
This one is they only sold this at the concert in 1995.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. And
I'm going to show you how bad of a quality 90s records are just for a second. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
I love this.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Look at that. Now you see it? Now you do.
I've learned so much. I've learned so much about vinyl. Now going forward, if I'm going to buy any, they're going to have to be represses. Seriously, represses, because if I'm going to buy an album from that era, those 2 decades, it seems like that's the way to go.
Well, it's honestly the move, because, the reason why I like to buy things like this is Made in Heaven's like one of those albums I probably will rarely ever listen to. And let's be honest, because when you listen to the song Mother, which is the very last song that Freddie Mercury ever worked on when he was alive.
Interesting.
It's heart-wrenching, because the very last bit of the song, you can hear a soulless Freddie Mercury sing it. And that's not... And that's the thing, when you look at David Bowie, he was suffering severely with liver cancer. And a year before he passed away, he created Black Star.
Yeah.
Black Star is also very similar to Made in Heaven, where it's a very heavy album. It's like literally David Bowie's like, here's my eulogy. I'm about to die.
Yeah.
But the same way Made in Heaven reminds you of that chapter ending, the same way Black Star reminds you of David Bowie's chapter also ending. And I think that's something that is hard to accept in the music world, especially as artists, is the end of the chapter, to understand the Beatles will never happen again.
No, they
You know?
won't.
You know,
No.
and Jefferson Airplane is gone. You know?
Yeah. The
Canned
ship has
Heat,
sailed.
gone. Jimi Hendrix, gone. The
Yeah.
Doors, gone. Velvet Underground, gone. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, the good thing is we have their music and their legacy to look forward to. Sorry if I've been rambling.
No,
but-
it's so true. I'm glad you brought up the Velvet Underground.
Oh my God, I fucking love and Nico.
Nico.
My name is Nico.
Can you say hello letters?
I got I'll show you two of Lou's albums. First one you know about is Solo. His first groundbreaking Transformer, yes. Walk on the Wild Side.
Yeah, that's the song with the transvestite.
It is, and look how just dated this is, but it plays well because it's from the 70s. I think this is a repressing of one of his 80s albums, complete contrast from Transformer. New sensations. You see how he's got like an 80s joystick in his hand?
Yeah.
This album was when he was really trying to... I like the album personally, but it has a song in there called I Love You, Suzanne, and he made a joke about it saying, the worse I am, the better I am, because that album ended up selling pretty well commercially during that time. Maybe because he was just accepting the 80s and he went along with it, and plus he was at a different period in his career. But I saw him twice in concert, and the second time I saw him was at a small club in DC, and this venue was better compared to like an amphitheater because the sound was so contained and you can actually hear what he was saying, and he was playing a lot of Velvet Underground songs. So it kind of harkened back to the good old days of when he was with the Velvet Underground. I felt that experience.
I just think it's incredible that a person like Lou Reed and John Cale.
Yes.
Like
John Cale.
Weird ass motherfucker. Very
yes.
If you want to talk about one of the weirdest people to ever exist in music production ever, is John. How weird? He would run around with a cape and a leotard. He would scream into the microphone so he can hear his different levels of shrieks. Like, the man is in his 70s and he still makes sex jokes while doing interviews. He's awesome. I love the guy.
He's got that classical background, but he's also a rocker. So it's like sometimes it's like him and Lou. It's amazing they were in the same band together since they're so different. Same thing with George Harrison, Paul McCartney. I sometimes I listen to their solo work, so different. How are they in the same band together? But then you realize that might be why there was some creative tensions along the way. Why it eventually didn't work out. So different because, I could see Lou was very difficult to work with. And even during his solo projects, there was a guitarist he was working on one of his solo albums, Bob Quinn. And all because of some kerfuffle or misunderstanding they had, or Lou's ego, he went into the studio, brought his guitar levels up, brought Bob's levels down. So that way he could be the dominant guitar force on an album called Legendary Hearts. And he was shooting himself in the foot, in a way, you think about it. But Bob Quinn was listening to the cassette in his home in Ohio. He takes the cassette out, smashes it on his driveway. He was so pissed off, and that was the last album they recorded together. So Lou would sabotage himself by doing that. People wouldn't want to work with him for being so difficult and, domineering. Mean, yeah. Talented, not the best singer, but good storyteller. But yeah, Bob was saying there was so much tension in the studio during that time. And I could definitely see that come across.
I've always wondered if you put Lou Reed and Iggy Pop in a room together, How much heroin would be gone in a matter of hours?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a
It,
very bad concoction. Really bad.
I wonder if they've ever collabed together. That's interesting because
Yeah.
they have similar voices. Yeah, that would have worked if they ever did.
Some of the most insane people were some of the greatest. I mean, thankfully, Iggy's still. It's interesting how Iggy is still alive, but Lou
Yeah.
isn't. Isn't that odd?
It is odd, and Lou had gotten sober apparently. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Okay,
it's the
sure.
same thing about Keith Richards,
They said the same thing about Tom
Jim
Petty.
Morrison.
Said the same thing about Tom, and like we kind of all knew that he had like addiction to some type of painkiller. And I was like, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
same thing with Ozzy. I thought he was sober for the longest time. The Osbournes comes out. They show him doing pills. They show him drinking. So I realized he never had taken his sobriety seriously. So, but these people have money. They find ways to keep themselves alive. Keith Richards, how is he still alive?
I don't know.
I don't know. I heard rumors he goes to Jamaica, does something with his blood. I don't know.
It's wild because again, we're talking about artists, and the interesting thing about artists is, and this is just my perspective. Every single person has the ability to be artistic, but some of us have this ability in our heads, almost like that adrenaline, that shot that goes through your veins, where it's like a thirst. You need it, or otherwise you'll die. It's like as if, as a human, that you not only survive off of water and food, but you also survive off of art.
True. Yeah, it is vital. That art is very necessary for survival as an artist, because that's the thing is that's why. Why do you think so many of these artists come out of retirement? They don't need money. They just need to keep creating. It's just like food for their brain in a way. They got plenty of food on the table. Look how some artists make money off of music publishing. They don't have to work again. They could live a private life if they want to, but they like, no, I got to create. I got to make my music. Why do you think Paul McCartney's still making music? And he's in his 80s.
88.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
And I mean, look at Betty White. She passed away last year. She retired like a year or two before she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
She was still in production, like in her 90s.
Yeah. I know. I feel that's what Clint Eastwood, too. His daughter said, if my dad would stop working, he would drop dead. It's probably true. It keeps them going. Yeah, because once they get out of that, some artists that, not all of them, there are some that we don't hear anything from them. They retreat to a private life, and then all of a sudden we find out, they had dementia, they die. But other artists, they keep going, and then once they stop for that moment, that's it. It's game over.
Isn't that something?
Mm-hmm.
It's just strange as humans that we have this inept ability to like be connected. To be honest, like I like to think of like Roger Waters. I remember I was listening to, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about when he did a concert in the desert near Eilat in Israel. And he remembers that one of the biggest problems he had with the concert was he wanted all people to be there. He wanted Arabs and Jews and Ethiopians, everybody to be able to come together in peace. And they weren't able to do that.
Wow.
They weren't able to allow Palestinians to come through with Israel. And he said, I'm not doing this concert.
Wow.
And he said it wasn't about like, the concert or anything. He said the fact that if these people are coming to the desert to come here to celebrate, they should all be able to enjoy and celebrate together. And you think to yourself, wow, he's an artist, but he's also a person that understands that human beings and emotions and feelings brought together by music can't be segregated, can't isolate it or separate it in any shape. You have to show it in its full form to everyone.
That's very similar to what the Beatles did when they were playing, I forget what southern state, that where segregation was still going on. They refused to play to a segregated audience because over in Britain that just wasn't happening. Paul said that that was just stupid. They thought the idea. They said, "Well, we're not going to play," and the concert went on, and there was an African American lady in the audience. She said it felt so great to just sit and enjoy a concert with white people.
Wow. It's it's strange because when you're sorry. Right now I feel like even more than ever there's this constant push for equality, that if because somebody is a certain class or race,
Mm-hmm.
you have to put them on the pedestal
Yes.
and, give them all the appreciation and love that they need.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you look at another brick in the wall, you realize there's a very big problem and flaw with that type of attitude where you forget the fact that who's telling you to do that? Who?
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 The teachers?
Government officials, media, journalism,
Yes.
social media. I can go on.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's even more so today than it was back then. There were different leaders back then, different societal dictates, if you will.
Yeah, and also being a successful artist didn't necessarily mean that you were black or Asian or white or Hispanic.
Right.
Or whatever your diversity was. Think about one of the biggest rap groups. I mean, we've been talking about artists throughout this entire episode, like the Beastie Boys, bunch of white Jewish boys, and they're one of the greatest rap groups. You could take like somebody like Nas.
Right.
Okay. Is it right to say that what makes Nas great is because of his ethnic background? No. What makes Nas great is because he was a very good lyricist. He knew how to put words together and be able to create the scenario as well as a rapper. And it's that simple. It has nothing to do with where you come from, why, the color of your skin or whatever. It's just weird on how this has kind of become the mesh of the industry of music, and especially when it comes to films and portrayal.
Yes. Yeah, because the emphasis is being put in the wrong place from the ones that are curating it for us. And they're not the artists that are doing that.
No.
It's the media. It's the award shows. They categorize everything. So it's not, and it's the internet. It's not the artist that's doing that.
No, I know. And it's crazy because people have been flipping out about people always, especially around the Oscars, flipping out, how this movie is nominated. I'm I think to myself, okay, the Oscars was something that they came up with in the 1920s.
Yes.
Think to yourself, why on earth would they come up with something like that? I don't know. Maybe because they were bored and they didn't know what else to do with their money. Or, I don't know, they needed some other way of propagating and promoting artists and actors to stay within the industry. I'm not a part of it. That's the point, though. I'm not a part of the Oscars. Neither is any of us. So why is this a thing where, oh, damn, Margot Robbie should have gotten Best Actress, but because of those damn Republicans, they screwed it all up. You think they give a shit about Republicans and Democrats, bro? No. They care about which director and which actor or actress they can manipulate the most, which musician that they can control the most, and have the most of their royalties and contracts, and continue that over and over again. That's all they care about.
It's always
money.
been that way.
Money.
Right. Especially with Oscar night. Look at how you see these, similar to the Super Bowl, special commercials come on. So they're like, well, we have to keep this interesting because these are commercial interruptions. So the content on here has to, keep the audience glued to their TV set enough so that way they can find out who's going to be in this dental floss commercial. Because they're trying to sell dental floss, they're trying to sell energy drinks, they're trying to sell, who knows, all kinds of stuff. That's what we forget sometimes. It's not about quality entertainment. It's not about giving the right award to somebody. It's about selling. Yeah, it's commercialized. And Will Ferrell describes the Oscars as jury duty for Hollywood.
You can imagine he's probably showing up with like a big fat blunt, and
Oh my
like
God, yeah.
in the closet, and just comes out like full puff of smoke with Seth Rogen right behind him. Da-na-na-na,
Oh yeah,
da-na-na-na.
totally.
Oh, they are really the OGs, because you think of like Seth Rogen, you think of like Will Ferrell, and like even like Snoop Dogg. These are people. They have an ability. They can do whatever the hell they want. Whatever they feel like doing, they can do. And no one will tell them otherwise. Nobody.
That's what I don't understand. It's like, why? There's certain ideas that these people have, and they have to have it distributed through Paramount, But why? Because I'm thinking, okay, if they're going to turn down this movie idea, why don't you just make it yourself? You've got the money. It's been done before. Because one of the Monty Python movies almost didn't get made, The Life of Brian, but George Harrison was able to mortgage his house so that way the Python guys could start their own movie production company called Python Pictures or something, I think it was. And that way they were able to make the movie themselves. So it's like, what if a big production doesn't greenlight the sequel? People know who you are. You could do an indie film, and eventually it'll get picked up by DreamWorks,
Yeah, and there's been a general push. Like, for example, if you go on like Apple TV, there have been a lot of indie productions that make a lot of those TV shows and movies. Even more to the point where I go on some of the streaming platforms, and you'll notice a lot of these movies that you're watching, they're not made by big productions. And one of the reasons why is because there's a strike that's been going on, the writer's strike. And people don't realize, like, even with Disney, their stock has been plummeting, like going straight down the wazoo, like to the point Disney right now is in worse condition than they were back in 1979.
And it didn't help that Governor DeSantis had taken away their right to kind of own their own land and not have to adhere to Florida state tax laws. So that probably was the nail in the coffin for them, or maybe not the nail in the coffin, but made things worse for them. Well, like they're so hypocritical, Disney, because they own ABC, they own Univision, the Spanish language channel.
Yeah,
they fire people. They don't give them a chance to redeem themselves over stupid stuff. I'm sorry, and then another network will pick up the person that they let go of. It happens on both networks all the time. And then it happens up in the Hollywood, segment of Disney. And it's just ridiculous. And even if there's allegations against somebody that haven't been proven, they won't air their special because of allegations without having the proof. It's ridiculous.
I'm just checking up. Is it Bob Iger that's the current CEO? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is. It's Bob Iger. Ooh.
I'm sure he just loves the governor.
Oh my God. It's crazy because when we look at a lot, like we've been going like back and forth, like, especially like the time lapse of the development of a lot of these different artists. But can you imagine that one person named Walt Disney manages to build his company up to a point where he gets inspired and he builds a theme park? And he happens to be as successful in his business to be able to keep on making films. And then he dies. And all of a sudden, the werewolves, they come out of the crevices.
Mm-hmm.
And they realize that they can have this company all to themselves.
Yeah.
And look what they've done. Since
They-
1966, it's oh my god, it's fucking magic. Hey, best place on earth, made by the werewolves. It's
yeah,
true, man.
it is true. And it's like, honestly, like that Roseanne Barr scandal from ABC. I had two opinions about it. I thought it was stupid what she said, but at the same time, I kind of feel like the network kind of jumped the gun a little bit. I understand, yeah, that there needs to be consequences. But I thought, I don't know. It's hard to say. She shouldn't have said that, but I thought just they fired people over lesser things that aren't even crimes. Look at the couple on that show that they both left their spouses consensually and started a relationship consensually, and they fire them because of their romance. I don't know. It's just the things that happen there. It's just it's ridiculous.
I think more now than ever, people are realizing that we have the ability to have control at our fingertips. Independent production companies, I've even had people on this podcast that do music production independently and help other artists be able to, publish and produce their music professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And these are independent entrepreneurs. These are independent business makers that have the ability to mass produce music that wouldn't have been possible, you know, 34 years ago or 26 years ago, for that
No,
matter.
you wouldn't see people with reel to reels in their basement, in their man caves. Digital production didn't exist back then.
No.
You know, it is amazing what you can do at your fingertips now. It absolutely is, and you don't have to spend a fortune for it.
No, and that's what we were talking about before. I mean, if you wanted to work, start a radio station back in the day, nobody started a radio station. The
No.
way it worked was there was a radio station already built. You'd go in there and you get fired. They'll fire you eventually. They always do.
Yeah.
And you make nothing. And then you go from one radio station to the other. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like, but then podcasting came along, and a
Mhm.
lot of radio hosts were like, okay, bye. And that's what they did. They started doing podcasting, or they started doing radio on online radio. And
Mhm.
I think as artists we're going in a very positive direction. I just feel that
Agreed.
right now it seems very scary because a lot of, control of the writers and the actors and
Yeah.
actresses, and there'll be a point where this whole thing's just going to blow up in their face because they may shoot themselves in the leg to the point that I don't even know if they'll be able to recover. Very similarly what happened to the car industry in the mid 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what goes up must come down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it does seem like there's a rise of indie artists mass production. It is incredible, and like when I started creating my own music, it just happened organically. I just started learning guitar as a stress reliever. I figure I needed something healthy that would just kind of get my mind off of day-to-day life, get my mind off my day job, get my mind off of so many things. And I was doing it just for that reason. And that's the same reason I started creating my own music. I really don't care if the whole world doesn't hear it. I'm 43, okay? I'm doing it for fun, but I released my first single called Limerence on a whim back in January, and I'm doing my follow-up's already in the bank, coming out in February 1st, called Strong. But the type of music I'm finding myself creating is kind of harkens back to a day when music mattered to people and it touched their hearts. And I decided, I eventually want to put all these songs that I'm releasing on an EP. I'm going to call it Nostalgic Reality. And that's basically what it's pointing out, is that even in this postmodern world that we're living in, I am seeing it even amongst, people that could be my kids now. They are embracing and preserving the relics of the past while moving forward at the same time. It's not what people are focusing on right now. There's so many horrible things happening on this world, but I feel that doom scrolling isn't helping. Looking at other people's perfectly curated lives on social media isn't helping. And, you know, binging on true crime all day. I mean, I know it is a big, you know, market out there, but I do feel that it kind of pollutes the mind and takes us away from focusing on things that can make us feel good, because that's what people did in the old days. They would escape through art. So I'm hoping that more people can do that again and use art as a sanctuary, whether they're creating it or experiencing someone else's art, because I feel that that's what will save this world ultimately, because I feel like we're feeding the fire if we're constantly talking about the fire. So that's kind of what I want my music to really touch on, not just with the chords and the sound, trying to harken back to the good old days, but lyrically, I want to kind of, put that out there as an artist. And even if only if a few people hear it, so what? I'm doing it just because, I enjoy it. And I think Rick Rubin was recommending that to musicians. He says, make the music you want to make. Don't worry what people think about it. And I couldn't agree with him more on that.
He's a wild man.
Oh, he is. I love that special he did with McCartney on Hulu. It's so good.
Do you know what I loved about that special the most is when Paul McCartney lied about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Because we know George Harrison spoke about it, I think, in the 80s. They asked him the same question. And I loved how, like, Paul McCartney was like, oh, no, it's not about drugs.
It's not about drugs at all.
No. And then I think it was an interview with, I think it was George Harrison. And it was like, George was like, oh, yeah, we were having a little fun with the LSD. And it's like,
in the sky with diamonds.
The song
coincidence.
I mean, like, I know I've dabbled in psychedelics. I haven't necessarily done LSD, but
yeah,
that definitely sounds like
kaleidoscope eyes. Come on,
yeah.
So you're not gonna just
create
a song like that in 1967 and not tell me that it's not about an hallucinogenic. Come on.
What's next? Paul McCartney's going to say that Helter Skelter was not, an aggressive song. It was all about love. Right.
He still plays that. He still plays that.
Oh my God.
I saw a video of him on tour, and that was one of the clips, and I was like, wow, I'm surprised he still plays that all these years later with his Beatles cover band, which is basically his backup band.
He had to buy back which is crazy. He had to buy back the rights for his music.
That was a total dick move on MJ. He was one of my first like idols as a kid. I saw him in concert when I was 8, and it's one of those concerts I'll never forget. Super talented, but my God, that was a total dick move. That he comes to Paul for advice, and Paul, just being the man he is like, okay, let me help this young guy out. He's trying to get on his feet as a solo artist. He brings up the music publishing thing, and Paul thought he was joking. He was like, oh, I'm going to get yours, Paul. He didn't realize he was dead serious, and that's what he did.
I mean, to be honest, though, Paul wasn't so innocent in himself, because at that time, he owned all of Buddy Holly's music. Like, all of it. He owned all the rights. So it's like...
Well, he was dead by then, so... right?
No, that's true. But, like, for example, look at Patsy Cline. When she died...
Mm-hmm.
All the rights and everything went to her family, as well as the foundation. So even to this day, everything for Patsy Cline, you can trace it to one place, which you cannot say that about a lot of 1950s singers. Because you'll find a Sony website, and it's just like thousands, just lines, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's like watching the credits to... a Civil War movie.
Exactly. Yes.
Another artist that Michael did something similar to, different situation, but it was out of anger this time. Eminem. That
really?
Song, what was it called? Just Lose It, where he has the nose. He's making fun of Michael Jackson in the song, and his nose pops off. I think is that what it's called? Just Lose It.
Let me see. Hold on. I'm gonna try to let's see, just lose it, and it's an Eminem song. Yes.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay.
Let's see. It's released in 2004. Okay, it was on his fifth studio album.
Mm-hmm.
The lead single. The
Mm-hmm.
song was caused controversy as its lyrics and music video parodies Michael Jackson,
Yes.
who was being accused of child molestation at the time. The song also pokes wow at MC Hammer and Beavis and Cornholio and Madonna. Oh my
I
god,
don't
and
think-
Pee Wee Herman.
And I don't
Jeez
think
Louise.
the other people didn't care. Pee Wee didn't care. I don't think Madonna responded, but Jacko did. You know what he did? He tried to sue him at first, and the I think suit was thrown out because he felt that Michael said, "Well, I've always been a fan of Eminem, but he's caused me pain with this," and so Michael did similar. He bought the company that owned Eminem's songs, and that's why Eminem got quiet after that. Wow.
You know, the interesting thing about Michael Jackson is I'm like one of the people on the side that I don't believe that he molested children. What I believe is that he was very much traumatized as a child. I mean, because he was a young childhood star. That
I agree with that.
as an adult, he just liked being like a kid. He liked having toys. He liked having like a roller coaster or a Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
And he found comfort around children. Now, that may sound weird to people, but guess what? There are teachers. You ever heard of a teacher? You ever heard of a teacher that loves teaching first grade?
Mm-hmm.
Ask, a teacher that actually cares about her class. And I had a teacher like this. She told me, she's like, I love being around kids because I get to teach them and help them grow and help them be hopefully successful adults. There is that thing exists within us humans that when we're older, we sometimes have this connection to children, whether it be teaching or but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a sexually like it's like sometimes it can be very misread.
I want to believe that, but then I watched Finding Neverland, and it just the adult survivors. It just I didn't think they were making it up.
You have to be
even though
careful.
his lawyer did.
You have to be careful because sometimes a lot of I'm not saying all of these people, but a lot of the times these people will do this so that they can win lawsuits because they're either in a tight rut or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely could see that argument too. Being a possibility too. There are people that do that. Yeah. But yeah, it's just
it's a hard thing. It is a hard thing. It's kind of to the point. When you look at Prince, people will say like, how could he? How could he take painkillers? Didn't he know that they were going to be laced? The thing about it is, and I could say this as a person that has a knee injury. When you're somebody that is successful and loves performing, and you're dealing with a severe injury, and you run into that situation, like the thing is, the same thing happened with Prince. Was very private. So was Michael Jackson. Prince did put on this whole persona and whatever, but like generally his private life was his private life.
He was very shy. I noticed that even towards the end. I remember when Arsenio Hall tried to come back, he went on his show, and I could just tell he just, at that point in his life, he just seemed subdued a little bit. You know,
he was in a lot of pain.
He was in a lot of pain, and because jumping around on stage that for that many years, it was understandable. It was understandable, and honestly, I feel. But then with Tom Petty, it was even worse because his hip was gone apparently, but he was taking painkillers to deal with it.
You know what happened? Joe Rogan said this. He said that his friend, this is crazy, I didn't even know this. His friend was the one that gave him the pill that was laced.
Oh my God. Oh, Prince?
Tom Petty.
Oh.
So he did a concert that night. And what Joe said was, his friend had like whatever, like pills and whatever, and Tom was in a lot of pain. He's like, "Oh, take this," and he took it, and he died.
You see, that makes sense because of the fact that he was brain dead but still had vital signs in the last day of his life, which is just
Bro.
very weird. It was just like, what the?
But you can't blame that guy. I mean, how was he supposed to know that it was laced? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Honestly, I feel similar feelings like towards Conrad Murray. I feel that he took the heat for something that a team of doctors are responsible for. They ran for the hills, but because he was the one that was there at the end, he was the one that had to bear the burden. He was the one that had to go to jail.
It's really I've talked about this before. There's this thing around like celebrities where people can get very envious or even jealous. You know how because they became famous and you're not. But in the end of the day, disregard the famous. They were people just like us.
Yeah.
You know, like John Lennon was a person just like the rest of us, and he was killed by a stupid dumbass. George Harrison was a person just like us that had to battle severe cancer and die from it. You know what I mean? And there's just where, because they're human beings just like us, they go through things like human beings just like us. They go through pains and problems like us. And they give us inspiration as artists, even though that they're famous. Without them, we cannot be successful artists. We don't
True.
have our inspiration. We don't have a way of ourselves to guide us through our creativity.
Yeah, because look how they still inspire us after they're gone, especially as we start to dig into their catalog. And some song really just inspires us for whatever reason. You all right, buddy?
I was going to ask you, we
Yeah.
kind of touched on this before. If anybody that's listening, where can they find your website, your social
Yes.
media?
Okay, veteranrockers.com. And also on Spotify, I'm there on Veteran Rockers. That's the only platform Veteran Rockers is on. But as for my music, it's available everywhere. And I have an Instagram handle, MikeFox. Let me just make sure I had changed it, because before I was trying to market myself as a actually let me go portable here.
There we go.
Yes. So I was trying to market myself as a voiceover artist for a while. Okay, it is. MikeFox.artist is where you can find out about my other projects that I'm working on. I'm also involved in a sketch comedy trio called Limbo Jimbo's Comedy 6. So that's like an ongoing project. We're working on a comedy album, which will include some music too. So, but yeah, Veteran Rockers, you can catch that on Spotify only. And, yeah, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, anybody that, needs a bit of rock and roll or get through that experience. I mean, like you said, you got a podcast that's all about that discovery with artists, and kind of getting into parts that you might necessarily not know. I like doing that too, like learning something like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because traditional radio doesn't give you that. And because the format of music plus talk lets you play music almost like in a radio show style, I kind of want to go back to the days of remember the storytelling disc jockeys? They tell you stuff behind the music, even before, VH1 started doing their music biography shows in the 90s. The DJs were your go-to guys. They would tell you about these artists and play deep cuts. So I want to go deep. I don't want to just play the hits. I want to play B-sides, and I want to tell you stories about these songs and these artists that, people don't usually know. Like, oh, I never knew that. So,
and my apology. What is the name of the podcast?
Again, Veteran Rockers.
Veteran Rockers. There we go. All right, so definitely go ahead and check that out. And if you want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost the Groove Pod. Mike, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, David.
My pleasure. Catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Eee. Oh, my God.